Welcome to the presentation of Group 3 on diabetic retinopathy detection using deep learning. We have split this presentation into 4 parts. My name is Noah, and I will be telling you about our objectives and the performance evaluation of our current model. Then Sven will take over, and he will talk to you about model characteristics and towards a clinical decision support system. Let's start with our objectives. First, we look at the problem and stakeholders. The problem is that diabetic retinopathy is the number one cause of blindness and is caused by diabetes. It is caused by damage to the blood vessels of light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye as a result of diabetes. Depending on the severity of the disease, eyesight can get worse and could eventually lead to blindness. These vision impairments are irreversible, but when the disease is treated in an early stage, harm can be slowed down or even prevented. At the moment, there is a shortage of ophthalmologists that can evaluate color fundus images and detect the disease. It also often occurs that less experienced medical doctors misdiagnose patients because of their lack of experience, as it can be quite hard to detect. We will focus on developing a deep learning model to detect the disease and the severity of it when present. The possibility of automating this process with an accurate deep learning algorithm is very promising, as it can help doctors diagnose faster. It could make examinations more affordable, provide more reliable results, and lead to a low rate of misdiagnosis. The stakeholders that we have to take into account for this problem are patients, clinicians, hospitals, and engineers. Other stakeholders could be government and insurance companies. These stakeholders all have different values. Our research is developed around the question: to what extent can an AI algorithm help in detecting diabetic retinopathy? Besides this, we have formed two sub-questions, being: will the AI system perform better than a trained clinician in diagnosing the disease, such that it increases the quality of the health sector? And is it ethically accepted to use machine learning in the real world? And what could be the consequences of using machine learning? We have found that there are many ethical aspects to consider when using machine learning to detect diseases, and would like to say something in short about three very important points. Justice. In order for machine learning to be ethically acceptable for use, diagnosis and decisions made have to be fair and unbiased. Models should not have different accuracies for people of different races or gender. Utility. Models should be useful and yield good results. Automation bias should be avoided. This is when the clinician either overtrusts or undertrusts the model. Overtrust can lead to de-skilling and self-fulfilling prophecy, while undertrust can be a waste of possible treatment. Autonomy. To ensure that a patient can give meaningful consent, the patient should be well informed on how the algorithm works. This includes that the doctor knows how the model works and should have the ability to explain the function of the algorithm to the patient. Now we will move on to performance evaluation. The performance metrics we have decided to use to evaluate our current model are safety quantified as sensitivity metric, efficiency quantified as specificity metric, the F1 score, the ROC curve and the area under this curve, and a confusion matrix. On this slide, you can see the confusion matrix of our model shown as a heat map. By looking at the confusion matrix, we can see that the model is pretty good at distinguishing the first three classes from the last two, but seems to have some trouble within these sets. The model seems to predict the severe case of the disease when it is proliferate diabetic retinopathy, and the other way around. Besides that, it also has the tendency to classify images as not having the disease, when there is in fact a mild or moderate form of the disease present. On this slide, we show you the ROC curve and the precision, recall, and F1 scores. First, we will look at the scores. When looking at these, our main interest is the recall score, as this means that there is a low amount of false negatives, or patients that have the disease without the model detecting it. The score should be the highest for class 0 and 1, as it is most important that when the disease is present, it is detected, and when it is not there, it is classified as healthy. The recall scores in the bottom right image show that the model has the least false negatives when detecting class 0 and 1, which is very fortunate. The ROC curve and the area under this curve show, together with the F1 score, that when looking at all classification thresholds, the model performs best at detecting a fundus image of an eye without proliferate diabetic retinopathy, or class 4. This is not weird, as this stage of the disease often shows very extreme symptoms and is therefore easier to detect.
Hello, I'm Sven and I'll be running you through the rest of our presentation, continuing onwards with the model characteristics. The important part of the model characteristics for now are our planned model improvements. First of all, we have further pre-processing methods, such as the removal of the optical disc, and color scaling, such as grayscaling and color intensification. These are all meant to improve the nerve visibility for our model. Additionally, we could also improve our pre-processing by further focus on detecting blurry or otherwise unclear images, on top of the detection of too light and too dark images we already have. There are also various parameters we would like to further tune by iterating over the various possibilities and see which provides us with the best models. Some of these variables include the dropout rates, the different optimizers, and the learning rates. Apart from these, there is also the possibility of adding a regularization layer. This would provide a function similar to that of, for example, grayscaling. However, by integrating it directly into a model, it could fit better than anything we could do during our pre-processing stage. Lastly, we also have the improvements of the misclassification rates. While our current mean squared error performance metric already provides some of this, we could further it by more finely assigning the misclassification penalties ourselves. For our last part, we will be discussing how the model would be implemented and the ethical ramifications that come with that. We have two main ways our model could be implemented: as a supportive tool for doctors and as a way locations such as opticians could provide preventive testing. Our doctor implementation would be used by a physician who is already knowledgeable on the field of diabetic retinopathy. When these experts are analyzing the pictures themselves, the model can then provide assistance by giving detailed percentages it gives to each severity of the disease. This tool could even go so far as to provide the user with the pictures it itself uses for its analysis after the pre-processing, or perhaps even some pictures specifically designed to improve human readability, all meant to help the practitioner make more sense out of these images. It is important to note, however, that for this application, the doctor should always keep full decision power to themselves and not use the model as any kind of main guiding line. As for the optician implementation, we envision it as such. A patient with risk on the disease, but without any kind of symptoms, could go to their local optician to have the pictures taken. The model could then analyze the pictures and send the person a mail with a recommendation on whether or not they should visit the doctor for a full check. The mail could even contain an appendix with the gathered information for use by the doctor, should the patient decide to go there. This use of the model could end up lightening the load on physicians by outsourcing preventive testing. We also have the ethical implications that our implementations bring. Firstly, for the doctor support, because the clinician always has the final call in the decision making, de-skilling is prevented and the automation bias is lowered. For the optician's implementation, it should be a priority for it to not replace any situation other than preventive testing, as the replacement of testing where there are, for example, symptoms would very much not be in the patient's benefit. Lastly, in general, the AI has very little to no chance to become biased since it is given nothing but images of the eyes. And as a final note, since the patient's data is used, it is important to ask for explicit and meaningful consent from the patients before giving their pictures to the model. This was a presentation. Thank you for listening.